Here again, welcome. Andy Miller, it's good to see you again. I know we've had some past conversations. Obviously, background in objective management group, years of sales coaching, hiring, have written the book, The Science of Hiring, along with other books that you have written. Really appreciate you being with us today.
Jeff, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so the topic that we want to talk about today is the art of saying no, which is tough, especially probably in the sales world because, we don't want to walk away from things, right? And so as, everything's an opportunity. We're usually pretty optimistic in the sales world. We can make anything happen. So saying no might be the hardest skill, probably one of the hardest skills to manage, but crucial to maintaining the focus and integrity in a sales call. So a question for you with your background experience, why is it important for sales professionals to set boundaries?
Oh gosh.
I mean,
Um,
I'm slinging it today, so you better
no,
be
that's
ready.
okay. It is important. Let's take it from the very first interaction.
Okay.
Um, there's a phrase I learned years ago, and the phrase is begin the way you wish to proceed.
Okay.
So,
You gotta help me
you,
with that
yeah,
one.
no, because it's kind of like, okay, you get hold of somebody, they're a little snippy with you,
Sure.
and you ignore it and let it continue, and then you have a second call and that snippiness continues, and you're going, do I ignore this because maybe there's a deal here, or do I address it? Now that's one example. Another example, somebody's doing comparison shopping. They're not telling you they're doing comparison shopping. They're filling out the spreadsheet, and you get in a conversation with them, your first conversation, and they're asking you questions they want answers to, but you're asking them questions and they're not reciprocating. And is that okay? Because you're now established a way of being with each other.
Hmm.
And that is now a precedent, and that precedent is hard to break. So you kind of have to decide, well, not kind of, you have to decide, how do you want to be treated? Mine is I want to be treated with fairness and respect, which they will also get in return from me. But if we can't do that, eh, let's not play.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up. People, I think we often forget we're actually training our customers every day. Every interaction, we're training the other side on how to behave. And we forget that. And so anytime we don't maintain some of those boundaries, we basically are setting it up for that to be the way it is indefinitely. So, having said that, what techniques do you find most effective when it comes to saying no?
Um, I tell them no.
Yeah, let's not overcomplicate it, right? I mean,
I, I like to be, how do I say this? Agreeable, but tell them no. I mean, if you're a Patrick Swayze fan, he did his movie Roadhouse,
yeah,
where he was the bouncer and he was teaching all the other bouncers, be nice but hold your ground. Be nice
yeah,
but set boundaries. And that's kind of my approach to of be nice but set a boundary. I literally did this morning. Somebody wants to go over their evaluation. I said, hey, here's a link to my calendar. We're going to need an hour. A little bit later, I got the meeting invite for 15 minutes. And I canceled the meeting and I sent him an email and I said, hey, I see that you scheduled 15 minutes for next week. I really appreciate you doing that. Unfortunately, 15 minutes isn't enough time to do it justice. We really need the hour. So I canceled the meeting, and here's the link to schedule for an hour. And now it's up to him. Does he want to review it or not? And if he doesn't, that's okay. And if he does, because my motto is let's do it right or not at all.
mhm.
And there's one other, which is, some people would say, well, that's kind of gutsy or it's brave. Um, I'm willing to say bravery is a function of how full your pipeline is.
There it is.
There's an Andyism.
I mean, it gets easier, obviously, when you're not starving to be able to say no, right? So
Yes.
if you've been working the process properly regularly, then it shouldn't be a big deal to say no because you want to get to know so you don't waste your time as well.
Yeah. So I had a fun one. This was an RFP, which I know in the manufacturing you deal with a lot.
Hmm.
And I got an invite to participate in the RFP. I'd never heard of this company. I looked at their exec team and on LinkedIn, and there was nobody there that I was familiar with. And so I called up procurement and I said, "Thank you for including me, but I'm looking at this, and two things. It's a short turnaround time, and I've never worked with you guys. So I'm going to respectfully decline."
Hmm.
And they're like, "Okay." And I said, "How did you get my name?" "Oh, well, we got it from HR." I didn't know anybody in HR. Now, and I'll come back to finish off the rest of the story in a little bit, but I said, "There's one other reason I don't want to participate." I said, "And I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but can I just give you the truth like I'm talking to my brother or sister, giving them some advice?" And they're always curious when you do it that way. They're like, "Okay,
Oh
what's this
yeah,
guy going to say?" Right.
yeah.
And I go, "I'm looking at this RFP and the specs are all wrong. You are not going to get the outcome that you're trying to get. And I do not want to participate in failure." And then she said, "Oh, what do you mean?" I said, "Well," and that rattled off like five things. "This is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong." And I said, "I don't have a copy of my electronic copy of my book to give you, but if you go to Amazon, you ought to read the book because it was designed to help people like you make the right decision and pick the right thing. It's not a foregone conclusion before you start. It's a decision tree."
Yeah.
Guess what? She bought the book. And I'm testing, right? I'm really saying no, but I'm
Yeah.
I'm testing the limits.
Yep.
She bought the book. She emails me a week later saying, "Hey, I bought the book, and I've been reading your blog post on LinkedIn." Okay, now she's actively engaged. We're somewhere. And I said, and she said, "Would you reconsider?" And I said, "Well, I want to talk to the person who wrote the specs." She's like, "Okay," got me in touch with HR. And I said, "How'd you hear about me?" "Oh, we interviewed some people and we asked them what assessments did they take, and that's how I came up with the companies that we sent this out to." There was no criteria. It just, what assessments have you taken in the past? It was all over the map. So anyhow, I don't want to burn up all our time, but I kept doing that every step along the way. And I said to the HR person, I'm looking at your RFP. I'm looking at the specs. I was told you wrote the specs. Can you tell me what you wrote?" She goes, "Yeah, I wrote this, and this." I said, "Have you seen the RFP?" She goes, "No." I said, "None of the things that you said you spec'd are in it." And she goes, "That's why nobody's called me." And so the story goes on and on and on. They invited me to participate in a virtual presentation. We'd set a meeting agenda, and 2 minutes into it, I got the list of names of people who were going to be there, but the one who was in charge clearly was not in charge. Somebody else was. And I said, and they were trying to change the meeting agenda. I said, "No, my understanding is this was the agenda. Is that the agenda?" And they said, "No, this is the agenda." And I said, "Okay, then unfortunately that doesn't work for me, and I'm going to respectfully decline." And I was done because you know how RFPs are. If you didn't help spec
Write the
it,
spec.
if you didn't help write the spec, you got a 3% chance of winning.
Yep.
But I thought this is going to be a fun exercise. And how far can I go with a no? And it gets you to the truth. Well,
Yeah.
if you're not emotionally attached, and for those who are going, "Well, you must have a big pipeline or whatever." That was a $2.2 million deal for me. So
Which is a huge deal.
it's a
Let's
huge
just be
deal.
clear. I mean, 2.2 million is big for most people, but it's significantly big when you're doing the consulting side.
Yeah, in our business, and I call that big deal intoxication. You get drunk by the possibility of this thing could be huge. But it's like, but when you look at the questions and the answers, and you look at it from a data scientific point of view, it's like I don't, I'm not getting answers to these questions, or the answers are loosey goosey, or and you're going, okay, but oh, but it's 2.2 million. There's possibility there. It's like, no, forget about possibility thinking. This is the data shows you're not getting this. So quit wasting your time. So
Well, and so
anyhow,
you talk about data, and so let's tie back because we've been working together with Objective Management Group for a while now, and you go back to this whole idea of the art of saying no and the data piece. So thinking about talking to a president, talking to a executive inside of sales, how does the data piece, let's say within the assessment or evaluation of Objective Management Group, tie into this whole idea of the art of saying no?
there's a number of ways. So let's take conversation around money, and you know, again, I'm sure when your folks are talking to professional buyers, or somebody else who's trying to figure out cost per piece, whatever, um, there's a negotiation piece in there. But it's not just a negotiate. There's a value piece in there, and so a couple components. Um, can I uncover the value this has to them? And I'll give you a example in a minute. Then it is, and do they recognize and admit that value? And then there's my own belief. My own belief is if we're providing them a premium product, can I charge a premium for it? Or was I raised with the belief that I have to be the cheapest? And then when it's time to negotiate, do I have strong negotiation skills? Because if I'm dealing with procurement, they negotiate multiple times a day, every day.
So this ties back into what you're saying is the evaluations in OMG actually tell you where someone's strengths are from a salesperson standpoint and how competent they are in these things that you're describing. Okay,
Yes, exactly. And so, to bring it home to manufacturing, I've got one client that I'm working with, and they said, well, we're selling through a distributor. Distributor wants to know if we can make this part, and they want it to be below, let's just say $4. I'm making that up.
sure.
And I said, okay, well, who have they been using? Why don't they just stay with them? Um, and as we started digging into it, what we discovered was the current supplier was making part that there were too high of a percentage of faulty parts.
Yep.
So they were missing their delivery date. Now you would go, okay, the missing the delivery date, that's annoying, but not a problem. And I'm like, no, no, follow the dominoes, follow the chain reaction. And I go, so they missed the delivery date. So how does that affect their client, the end user? And they go, oh, well, they're late on delivering airplanes. Little Piper Cubs? No, no, big commercial aircraft. What's the consequence of that? Millions and billions. And you want to make sure that I give you this part for under $4.
No.
So it's missing context. So what is that? That is OMG's ability to understand, or to analyze your ability to consult, your ability to find value, your ability to discuss money, your ability to negotiate. But it's hard to negotiate if you don't know your value and where you stand, or you mentioned differentiating value. So all those are components that I need to know. Can my rep do this? Or if it's a big deal and my rep doesn't have the skills to do it, then where do I need to help boost him or her?
And so back to the art of saying no, those data points will actually evaluate how well someone can say no based on their own skills and DNA. And going back to that comment, as a president, as a sales leader, I can then see whom I need to train on getting better at pushing back and saying no. So again, I think one of the things that I always think about is saying no is just it's going back and forth to saying no, I can't accept you just telling me I need to be at a lower price without any conversation. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to continue the conversation, but I don't accept that rule of engagement.
That's right.
And so from all of this discussion, again, going back to talking to the presidents and the sales leaders, how would you summarize then what, like, proactively, what should they do next if they're thinking about their own sales teams and they're thinking about how they're approaching this whole idea, this art of saying no, what would be the advice that you would give them?
Well, so I know both you and I tend to work like doctors do. So I'm a big believer in the OMG tool because I see it as the MRI. It's something's wrong. Let's do an MRI and see what the real issue is, or I'll use engineering terms. Let's do a root cause analysis.
Yeah, our technical
Right.
people appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes. So let's do a root cause analysis to see what the real issue is, and then and and can it be resolved fast enough? And if it is, then you can take it on, or you may discover there's too many issues, or it can't be resolved fast enough, or as I like to say, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. You're just best to live with it, or find a workaround.
Yeah, and I think, the final thought on this is when I think about those roles, that responsibility, what you're trying to actually do in terms of this art of saying no is you're really trying to build a more consultative approach into the team. It doesn't mean that you are avoiding anything. It doesn't mean that you're saying no to everything, but you're willing to push back at the appropriate time to ensure that as you were telling that story through the whole way, to ensure that you're getting the right information and you're not being asked to go chase a bunch of things down or told that things are going to happen that aren't going to happen. Like you're holding accountability both directions.
Yes, and that to me that's part of the boundaries in saying no, right? If they want something from me, I want something from them, and I think there's kind of a a hierarchy on what they want from me and what I want for in return. I want to know that they're going to match me in an equal amount of effort. And I'm not saying 50-50, 49, 51,
Yeah.
whatever. But if they want me to do something, in my mind, I automatically go, so what's fair and equitable to ask for in return? And so I'll ask for that. And if they say no, but they give me something close to it, okay. Because I'm really looking for, is there reciprocation? Is there transparency here? And if
Yeah.
there's not transparency and reciprocation, then I'm in the game, but I don't know that I'm in the game.
And fundamentally, if you can't say no, you probably don't have a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, it can be a gentle no. Hey, I'd love to help you guys, but I got to be honest, this doesn't work for us. Could we do this, or this? Can we massage it a little bit? And if they go, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, we'd explore that. Or if they go, no, it has to be this way, well, you got your answer.
Yeah. Well, any other final thoughts?
No, and if you can't take no because your pipeline's not thick enough, then they should go listen to the other interview we did on get out there and prospect more.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again, Andy. It's awesome as always to connect up and look forward to joining you on one of these in the future. Again, thanks and have a great weekend.
Hey, thank you, Jeff. You too.
All right, take care.